The Mac Mini might just save my musical life. That sounds a little like hyperbole, but it's not far from true. I'm going to explain why. Let's talk about it. So everybody's been talking about how the new M4 Mac Mini is tiny and powerful and all of these things, and also cheap. And all of those things are true. There's also a place where people have used Mac Minis in the past where it added value to something else in their home other than just, the computing. And for me, I think that the Mac Mini M4 is going to help me with a problem that I've had for many years. And that problem is I hate streaming music. I want to like it. There's a lot to like about it. You get you pay $10 a month and you get all the music ever created and put down on some sort of medium. I guess that's a good thing. But it has, both for me and I think for the world, destroyed the value of music as an art form. There's a whole generation, maybe even two generations at this point, who look at music as sort of an additive, or maybe like the soundtrack of their lives. They don't look at music as having like an investment type value that I did when I was young, because there was money tied to having music. Like, if you had $10, you could buy one record or maybe two used records. And then you bought those two used records and you went home and you listened to them, and that was what you bought. Now, when I say records, young people, I mean LPs, long playing records, or as the kids these days call it, the vinyls. That's what I'm talking about when I say record. Now, when I was 8 years old, I bought my first record. Was Kiss, Alive 2, because everybody my age at that time loved Kiss. And then I discovered the Beatles, and I bought my first Beatles album, which was, I believe, official soundtrack to Help. It had the hits on it, but it also had like the George Martin orchestral thing and a picture book in it and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and I went on to buy all the Beatles records. And I've bought many Beatles records many times over, as you might see. Over here, I've got more Beatles records. I've got so many Beatles. I think like 1/3 to 1/4 of my record collection is just Beatles records. But anyway, there were records, and then there were cassettes, and then there were 8 tracks too. I can't leave out 8 tracks. Learned to sing my first song from the factory 8-track cassette that came in our family's 1974 Chevy Nova. They call the Wind Mariah, which is from Paint Your Wagon, which was originally sung in the film by Clint Eastwood, I believe. But anyway, again, I digress. There's all of this history and lineage and a story behind how I discovered all the music that I discovered up to a certain point. I had to make choices. I had to go and, I knew I was going to get a CD player for Christmas. This was probably my sophomore year in high school. And I was going to get a CD player, and I had a little bit of money, and I went and I bought some CDs. And the first CD that I bought was Led Zeppelin 2. And yeah, every record store didn't have all the CDs. Like there weren't all the CDs to begin with. It's like the big hits got put out first, and then slowly CDs took over the place that records held, and it just kind of went on like that through the 90s, and then digital music happened, which brings us back to where we are now. Whereas, like, if I had $15, $10, I could make a choice to buy one record, and then I could live with that record and learn that record and share it with my friends, and we could talk about it and all those kinds of things. Digital streaming has destroyed that concept. So that's a long way of saying, for me, I've been looking for a way to take the 1,000+ CDs that I have still stored in boxes and the hundreds of records that I have and digitize them in such a way that I could have them as a collection again. I do have a CD player, but it's in storage. I do have all of these CDs, but they are in storage. The CDs that I want to listen to are in this thing here. It's probably a couple hundred CDs in there. And then I have a spindle of CDs somewhere that I need to find and put in the computer, okay? Now, I used to have a lot of my CDs digitized, but I did not back them up, and that was a mistake, okay? It's a mistake that most people wouldn't make today because we have cloud storage, and you can put all the stuff in the cloud, and you can have it on a local hard drive, etc., etc. Anyway, the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini has given me a chance to look into something that I was interested in when I first heard about it, but it sounded like too much work and maybe too much money. We'll discuss that. Something called Roon. If you're not familiar with Roon, I have written down a definition of what Roon is. Okay, what is Roon? It is a music database. It is. It is a music streamer. So it will stream your music to all these other places. It's a networked server available not just locally in your house so that you could stream it to all your available networked devices, but you can also use an app called Roon Arc to access your collection everywhere. And that might sound cool just if it was all of the CDs that I've owned in my lifetime that I wanted to have access to. Plus, I can start digitizing my records. I don't know if I want to do that. That's a lot of work. And I mean, most of the stuff that I have in my record collection sounds good when I listen to it as a record, but is available elsewhere. Anyway, in order for Roon to work, you have to have all your files on a hard drive. You have to have what they call a Roon core, which is some sort of networked device. It could be a tiny Intel NUC, that's a weird word, computer. It could be, Roon sells their own nucleus thing that you can network, and it'll have all of your stuff. It'll be your Roon core, but that's $500 for just something that's $500 plus a hard drive or two. Which seems like a lot when you think about the fact that a Mac Mini M4 costs $599, and you can get it on sale for $500 if you're lucky. So I thought to myself, I just got the Mac Mini. I don't necessarily need it in my setup anywhere, but I would love to have access to all my CDs. So I found out about Roon, and I was like, okay, why am I attracted to Roon? Well, my music streaming experience, my music experience in general since like 2005 has been awful. I am a lazy listener, and I think music streaming services make you a lazy listener when you go with streaming alone, because it's no longer like when I had a Discman. You know, they put a compact disc. I had a little booklet of compact discs that I carried around in my backpack with my Discman and my headphones. And I had to choose what I was going to put in that sleeve of like 15 CDs for the week. And then I would listen to them. Most of the time I would like find a record that was really speaking to me at that moment, and I would listen to it. And that would be my week, and I would delve deeply. I would become familiar with records like I would the body of someone that I was deeply in love with, right? It was a different kind of listening than what I do now, which is usually I get into my car or I wake up in the morning and I want to listen to music, but I don't have any kind of like visual cues to look at stuff. So I just go in and I find a playlist that Apple has made or somebody like that. And I just play that playlist. A lot of times it'll be something like a yacht rock playlist, because yacht rock is very comforting. Very comforting, very mild-mannered, very easy listening, as they might say. And Michael McDonald, that guy's a hell of a singer. I don't know how he does it. But Roon gives me a chance to break away from this Why, you might ask? Because Roon is not just about collecting all of your physical media into a digital place and giving you access to it. You can also connect it to a streaming service. Unfortunately, Tidal or Qobuz, and Qobuz I'm not really familiar with, but Tidal I have used before. It is not my favorite streaming service. So you have a Tidal account, you connect it to Roon. Roon looks at everything that you've got in Tidal, and then it looks at everything that you've got in your folder that is on your hard drive, and then it coalesces them together. And not only does it coalesce them together, but it has a much deeper integration, a much more robust algorithm to connect things and to allow you to really delve deep into the music that you're listening to, which is in a lot of ways kind of like when you listen to records back in the old days and you would have the album sleeve and you would read all the lyrics and look at who produced the record and who else played on this record and where was it recorded and all of those kinds of things that you can't really find in a streaming app, because streaming apps are very surface level when it comes to that kind of deep information. You can find it, but it's not featured. It's not something that really there. Now we can get lyrics, but anyway. So how did I set up my Roon server? Well, I took the M4 Mac Mini base model, 156 gigabytes of storage, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the M4 chip, tiny little box. I took that, and I took my Apple Super Drive, which, I mean, yeah, I know. Apple hasn't changed the Super Drive since 2008. They still sell it, but it hasn't been, there's no really way to upgrade it, so whatever. It'd be great if it played Blu-rays, but that's beside the point. Super Drive, and then I got from a company called Orico this brand new hard drive USB/Thunderbolt hub that has SD card readers and USB stuff and Thunderbolt ports and all that kind of stuff. But it also has a 4 terabyte spinning hard drive as well as a 2 terabyte SSD. Because the 256 gigabyte hard drive is too small, right? It's too small to really use long term. I haven't done it yet, but plan to make the 2 terabyte SSD in the Orico device my home drive for the Mac Mini. And then I'm putting everything that I'm ripping from my CDs into the 4 terabyte spinning hard drive. From there, I get into the Roon app and I connect it to the folder where all that digital information lives, and it brings it all in. It collects all the metadata. It connects it to all of the things that I have also saved on Spotify, and it gives me my collection in a way that it's almost impossible to discern, like what is mine and what is from Tidal, which is finally the best of both worlds. And I've been using it for 2 weeks, and it's caused me to be more curious about music, not just music that I don't know, that I've never heard before or anything like that, that I haven't been able to find on streaming services, because I'm a visual person. I need to look at a record store and flip through the things. I need to look at my collection and pick something out. I've always been that way, and digital music doesn't lend itself to that. Like digging 5 menus deep to look at a little scroll of tiny little squares to tell me whether or not I want to listen to a record is not the way that it works for me. But Roon has given me an opportunity to do that, because not only am I going back and I'm finding a lot of new old stuff that I haven't listened to in a long time. When you're onboarded to Tidal, it also gives you, like pick at least three things that you like. Well, I spent almost an hour picking bands and artists that I liked, because unlike some of the other streaming services out there, when you select a band or an artist on Tidal in that onboarding process, it fills in like 4 or 5 other acts that are related to them. And so I went down this sort of like rabbit hole of finding country artists that I like, alternative artists that I like, rock artists that I like, jazz artists that I like, R&B artists that I like, till I had like a couple of hundred people that I had selected, which then gives the title algorithm a lot of things to look at, but it also gives the Roon algorithm a lot of things to look at. So it's been feeding me stuff that I haven't heard, and my hope is that eventually it'll start feeding me stuff that I don't know about. But it's just been nice over these first 2 weeks to go and sort of use it and have a new way of interacting with my music. If you want to rip CDs from the CD into your hard drive, you'll need a ripping software. There are many out there. I'll put the link to that I'm using down in the description below. If you're on a Mac device, every time you put a CD into your computer, Apple Music or iTunes or whatever you want to call it will pop up and be the automatic thing that wants to read that CD. But unfortunately, Apple Music won't rip the CDs as FLAC files, which is a smaller container that is lossless as opposed to MP3, which is lossy. I've made videos about that before too. It's a long story, but you want the best quality that you can have. And with a 4 terabyte hard drive, you can put a ton of music at lossless quality into that 4 terabyte hard drive. It's not like video files or anything that are going to be gigabytes upon gigabytes upon gigabytes large if you do them in a full fat form. If you want me to make a separate video where I go through everything and rip the CDs and show you how I have it organized and all that kind of stuff, I can do that. But it is a simple process, really. It takes time because you can't make CDs rip faster, regardless of how fast a drive you have, because the drives only read the CDs so fast. So anyway, it is a long and arduous process. So far, I've ripped this many CDs. And that's only because I've just been doing it casually as I sort of work around the studio. I have this whole book of CDs that I still have to get in there. So what is the point of all this rambling, Jason? The overall point is that the Mac Mini has often been looked at as not just an inexpensive computer that people can use in their homes or at schools or something like that, but it's also something that can really be a value add to other parts of your digital life. And so while I have the Mac Mini set up over here, and I have a screen, and I have all of this stuff, I can still sit down here and use the Mac Mini to my heart's content. But it sits over here separate from my other 2 computers that I have on the other sides of the studio. And I leave it on all the time. I have 2 cheap Yamaha speakers plugged into it. And it will always be on. So if I'm wanting to listen to something in my house, I can send it to a Sonos speaker. I could send it to an Apple HomePod. I could send it to Apple TV or a networked TV or anything like that. Anything that's networked speaker-wise in your home can be accessed by Roon, and you can send stuff to that. I even have it set up so I can send it to my studio computer over there so I can listen to it on my nicer speakers and just kind of chill out. And that computer also runs the Roon software. It's not the Roon core, it's just the software, but it connects to this and everything. It is a very robust system that has the potential to get me back into listening to music in a way that I haven't listened to music in 20 years. And I'm anxious to see if it does that. Roon does cost money. It's a subscription service. You can't get a lifetime subscription, but it's like $800 for a lifetime subscription. And I don't know if I'm going to live that long or if I want to spend that much money, because what if there's something better that comes out? I don't know. So I'm going to try Roon. I'm going to rip my CDs. I'm going to do all that. There are things that work like Roon, like PlexAmp. PlexAmp is sort of like Plex, but music specific, and you can access your music outside of the house and everything like that. I might look into a video on PlexAmp as well if you guys want that. But right now, Roon to me looks like the most robust, the most well thought out, the easiest to use service out there like this. So I'm gonna go with this. I'll report back later on how it's going, if my musical life has improved because of my use of Roon. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. There's a lot of information here. I rambled on quite a bit, but when I talk about music, I mean, it's one of my passion things, and it's been a passion thing for me since I was very, very young. And so, like I said, my musical life is a story. There's different points in time where I discovered this, or I listened to this, or I learned about this, or anything like that. And so when I get into a video like this and I talk about music, I tend to tell those stories. So hope this was helpful. Hope this was interesting. I'm sure you'll tell me all about it down in the comments below. Once again, thanks for being here. My name is Jason. Until the next time, I'm out.